You all know me too well, but I remembered, yay. So welcome to the Orange Coast Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Donna McCartney, and I'm honored to be your worship associate today. I'm joined by Wendy Karn, our intern minister, and Jacob Swetland, our director of music ministries, and Danielle Lewis, our director of religious education for children and youth. So we welcome you all this morning. Whether you've been here for 30 years or 3, 10 months or 10 minutes, and whether you strolled, rolled, zoomed, hi Zoomers, ran or danced in, we are glad to have you join us today. I want to extend a special welcome to visitors. If you're seeking a spiritual home, we hope that you will find it here. We're a community of many different identities and beliefs. We are bound together not by dogmas or creeds, but rather by a covenant to create a welcoming and loving community. We need not think alike to love alike. As we celebrate Martin Luther King Day tomorrow, Intern Minister Wendy Karn's sermon focuses on Black Churchwomen. She shares with us author Annemarie Mingo's account of how these Black churchwomen and their understanding of God became action and transformed a nation. In the spirit of building this community, let's recognize the many volunteers who have helped put this service together today. And there they are up there. Thank you. Roomers, we invite you to silence your cell phones. And Zoomers, we invite you to say hello in the chat. As we worship today, let's acknowledge that our church property rests on the sacred ancestral homelands of the Hashiman and Tongva peoples who seek justice and responsible stewardship. We begin our worship with the lighting of our chalice. If you've not had an opportunity to light our chalice yet, I'm always looking for new folks who want to do it as a way for us to kind of get to know our new people and remember the folks who have been around for a while. So let me know after the service, and I'll be happy to put you on the chalice lighting list. This morning, I talked Bella Strong into lighting our chalice, and she is, come on up, Bella. She is a relatively new member here at our church. She's just started coming last September. So she's a humanitarian who works for Club Dust, building houses for the poor in Mexico. She has had other church experiences, but she loves the friendliness of our church and the variety of groups that she can join. So let's say our chalice lighting together. Love is the spirit of the church, and service its law. To dwell together in peace, to seek truth and love, and to help one another. This we affirm together.
Please rise. Lift every voice and sing. Let me turn to the right page.
Stony the road we trod, bitter the chasing rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a wave that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughter. Out from the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of a bright star is cast. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing facing the rising sun with our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelness, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, and kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us energy to act and at least the possibility of sending this spinning top of a world in a different direction. And if we do act, in however small a way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of presents, and to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, that in itself is a marvelous victory.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we'll walk hand in hand someday.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. So our story for Time for All Ages today is about Magnolia Cox and her appearance in the National Spelling Bee. It was written by Carol Boston Weatherford, and it is an award winner of the Coretta Scott King Award for Children's Literature. So I'm happy to share it with you today. Magnolia Cox was no ordinary kid. Her idea of fun was reading the dictionary. From A to Z, she learned words, meanings, spellings. She loved to read and study and spell. In 1936, the 8th grader won her school spelling bee after Magnolia passed a 50-word written test and an oral competition. She advanced to the Beacon Journal newspaper's citywide bee. That April evening, Magnolia faced 50 of the city's best spellers. 3,000 people jammed in the armory of the Akron, Ohio gymnasium. Can you spell nervous? Nervous. That April evening, with butterflies in her stomach and a lump in her throat, Magnolia listened to the pronunciations and definitions before spelling each word. Magnolia got ruled out teary-eyed. She got her coat and hat and prepared to go home, but someone urged her to stay. Due to an error, the judges brought her back. Magnolia correctly spelled daft, writ, pretentious, brusque, gradate, felicitate, and apoplexy. Can you even pronounce some of those words? In the final rounds of the B, Magnolia battled back and forth with John Huddleston until he tripped up on the word sciatic. After spelling the word that John had missed, Magnolia had just one more word to the title: voluble. With those 7 letters, Magnolia became the first African American to win the Akron Spelling Bee. Her prize was $25 and a trip to the National Spelling Bee in Washington, D.C. Can you spell surprised? S-U-R-P-R-I-S-E-D. At events all over Akron, Magnolia was the guest of honor. Backstage at the Palace Theater, the Spelling Dynamo met dancer and actor Bill Bojangles Robinson and jazz musician and composer Fats Waller. At the Akron City Club, she dined with local bigwigs. African American clubs held fundraisers, and Black churches took up offerings to help with her travel costs. People also prayed for her. Akronites now mentioned Magnolia Cox in the same breath as boxing champion Joe Louis and the track star Jesse Owens. Can you spell famous? Letters and telegrams poured in from far and wide. Magnolia's school community was rooting for her too. Her teacher, Miss Grave, bought her a new dress, and a man gave her a beautiful necklace. Magnolia also received 2 dictionaries to study. She spent 3 periods a day prepping for the National Bee. She memorized 100,000 words. Can you spell dedication? D-E-D-I-C-A-T-I-O-N, dedication. At Akron's Union Station, a military band and a crowd of thousands saw the spelling bee champ off to Washington for her first train ride. Magnolia got on board with her mother, Miss Grieve, and Mabel Norris, a reporter from the Beacon Journal, the newspaper that sponsored the Akron Bee. This is the most fun I've ever had, said Magnolia. Can you spell excited? But she was about to face some hard truths. Can you spell discrimination? Do you even know what it means? Magnolia would soon find out firsthand. On the train, Magnolia sat in a coach open to black and white passengers. But when the train reached Maryland state line, she and her mother were forced to move to the black-only car. Back then, segregation was the law in the South. When Magnolia arrived in Washington, she and her mother had to stay with a black doctor because the hotel where the other spellers stayed was for white customers only. Magnolia and her mother couldn't even ride the main elevator to the spelling bee banquet. They had to climb the stairs inside the banquet hall. They were seated away from the other spellers in their family. She and Elizabeth Kennedy from Plainfield, New Jersey, were the first students to compete at the National Spelling Bee since 9 newspapers founded the competition in 1925. The 2 Black girls had to enter the ballroom through the back door and were seated at a card table apart from the other spellers. Can you spell racism? The second-class treatment met her at every turn. Magnolia couldn't afford to get rattled. She had to concentrate and believe in herself. She remained calm and nailed word after word. Can you spell focus? The judges threw harder and harder words at the spellers, and the audience, Miss Grieve, Magnolia's teacher, bit her lip. One by one, the competition fell. Elizabeth Kenny misspelled Appalachian and placed 10th. When Doris Rubin misspelled acceptability, Magnolia advanced to the final 5. The judges, mostly from the segregated South, couldn't seem to stump her. Then they threw a curveball, a word that Magnolia had not studied: nemesis. Magnolia's teacher and the newspaper reporter protested. They argued that the word nemesis was not on the official list. Furthermore, in Magnolia's dictionary, the word was a proper noun referring to a Greek goddess, and thus not acceptable. The judges stood by their decision. Can you spell unfair? Magnolia was out. But what an achievement. She made history by becoming a finalist in the National Spelling Bee. The spellers spent the rest of the week sightseeing. They visited the White House and the Washington Monument. Magnolia saw new stamps being printed at the Bureau of Engraving. Can you spell amazed? At the end of the whirlwind trip, Magnolia took home a $75 prize and was honored with a big homecoming parade. Can you spell proud? Even though she didn't win the championship, Magnolia had proven that African American students are just as smart as anyone and compete and excel when given a level playing field. That was Magnolia's triumph. We're going to take a slight pause to light the children's chalice.
Doesn't go out. Go ahead, I'll get it.
Okay. Our opening reading comes from Black theologian James Cone, and he says this of Dr. King in his book, Martin, Malcolm, and America, published in 1991. Martin was a political revolutionary, not in the Marxist sense of transforming the political economy, but in the racial sense of radically changing the socio-political relations between blacks and whites in the South. He was the dominant symbol of civil rights movement, which changed American politics, creating conditions for the genuine African-American political power in the South. The Civil Rights and Voting Rights Act were his major achievements. The enormous impact that blacks have made in the political American life would be unthinkable without the achievements of Martin King and the civil rights movement. King particularly belonged to the world of the poor and the disinherited. His last campaign, the Poor People's March on Washington, which he did not live to complete, symbolized his political dream for America, a dream for a land where blacks, whites, Native Americans, Asians, Latinos, and others would live as brothers and sisters equal under the law, proposing an economic Bill of Rights that would guarantee a job and income for all. Before we continue, we are going to go into a time of meditation to embody the dream of Martin Luther King Jr. Please feel free to steady yourself, ground yourself, close your eyes if you're comfortable, or loosen your gaze. Spirit of life, we have come into each other's presence this day, seeking a part of ourselves, knowing that we do not live alone, and knowing that we cannot live fully if we are for ourselves alone. We gather in thanks for the life and ministry of Martin Luther King Jr., not because we wish to worship him as a saint, but because we wish to embody his dream as a possibility we make real. We gather with full knowledge of our shortcomings, our lives set before us many tasks, and often we are not equal to them. We may fall short of our own expectations. We find we do not know enough. We are not always patient. We fall into anger. We cannot find the strength. We lack the vision and wait in vain for some wisdom. It's painful to acknowledge our shortcomings, yet here we are, Spirit of Life. We are here, not always perfect, not always wise, not always just, but wonderfully and mysteriously human and alive. We dedicate this time together to renewing our hope. May the stories we share give us courage. May the songs we sing give us hope. May the words we speak give us wisdom. And most of all, may the touch of hands, the sight of faces, the sound of voices lifted in song and affirmation restore us in faith that this world may be made whole with all its people one.
If every woman in the world had her mind name of love, there would be no more war. If every man in the world had his mind set on freedom, if every brother stood with brother as a witness for peace, if every man of every nation, young and old, each generation, held his hands out in the name of love, there would be no more war. If every leader in the world shared a vision of freedom, if every leader in the world shared a sweet dream of peace, if every leader of every nation worked for justice and liberation, holding hands out in the name of love, there would be no more war. If every nation in the world set a true course for freedom, if every nation raised its children in a culture of peace, if all our sons and all our daughters reached in friendship across the waters, refusing to be enemies, there would be no more war.
Ooh, that was a powerful song today. And I also appreciated that during our time of silence, we heard kids in the background, which is always a nice thing to have in the background. So I'll just share with you, I was born in the late 60s, and yes, I was far too young to be watching the news with my parents. However, my first memories of the news, while they weren't from the civil rights movement, they were of space rockets, the Vietnam War, and the resignation of President Nixon, things our parents believed were historically important. At least that's how I remembered these times, being plopped down in front of the TV with my brother because these things were historic. And they were. What I don't remember is having an early impression of civil rights protests. And this makes sense. I was literally a baby. I guess it makes sense. But what doesn't make sense is that in this turbulent time, things rarely got talked about in my history classes or my social studies classes or my government classes, at least not at a very deep level. I knew they happened. I learned about the Civil Rights Act as a response to how Black people were treated in the South. But honestly, I think I learned more about slavery from a miniseries called Roots that happened in the 70s. LeVar Burton was in that, and he is still teaching children about truth. I knew these things happened, but before the real story came into focus, it would be a while. It would take time. It would take until I was in my later teens, 20s, college years. I grew up in Huntington Beach, California, in a new house, in a new neighborhood with new schools. I learned to read early and was put into the gifted and talented program. I have thoughts about this too. I may have not been as smart as I was odd, but that's another sermon. And I learned to read really early, but unlike Magnolia, I did not do very well in spelling bees. So, like Magnolia, I kind of have to put myself in feeling how nervous I was just in my own spelling bees at school. I was a terrible speller. But the fight to integrate spelling bees did not start with Magnolia. Since the early 20th century, Black students had competed in separate spelling bees in states and counties. Like with segregated schools, local spelling bees were slow to integrate. It took pressure from activists and pressure from the national level from organizations like the NAACP during the civil rights movement, and they challenged the Scripps spelling bee to influence them to no longer accept students that had taken part in segregated spelling bees. So that was a significant change that happened in the beginning of the 70s. And I was rather astonished when I looked into this a little further and found out that it would not be until 1998 when Jodi Ann Maxwell from Jamaica would be the first person of African descent to win the Scripps National Spelling Bee. And in 2021, 14-year-old Zelia Avantgarde would be the first African American to win the prize. 2021. While this played out over generations, it would not have happened without preparation, dedication, courage, and faith of unimaginable amounts of people all over the country. And it gives me confidence that when we see someone else succeed, it gives us the confidence that we can succeed too. It took support from her entire community, Magnolia, to even get to the place where she could go to Washington, D.C. Her community supported her, her church, a doctor that they didn't even know in Washington. People need to step in to the points of the movement where they can participate. And again, there are untold thousands, millions of people that helped us get to the point where we're at right now. All to say that I was well into adulthood when I saw extensive violence that occurred during the protests and just how many people were involved, how many protesters, how many police officers with riot shields. And I wondered why current events that we had covered in school had not given me a picture of what had occurred in my lifetime when I knew loads about other things. What I didn't learn until much later than that or notice is maybe a better way of saying it was how many women, particularly young women, were on the front lines of the movement. If you go back and look at any of the recent documentaries from there was a great one called 1968, A Year of Change, that is a 4-part documentary that has a lot of footage and a lot of things to know. And it is noticeable that there are a lot of women there. Many of you know this, but I am in seminary, and although I get a break for the summer, I've taken classes over the summer the last few years, and this past summer, I took a class in spirituality and social justice movements of African American traditions. It was one of the most impactful classes I have taken, leaning into learning the history of this country from a different perspective. And one of the books that really influenced me from this, the slides are not working with me today. So the book on this slide is one of those books. It's called Have You Got Good Religion? Black Women's Faith, Courage, and Moral Leadership in the Civil Rights Movement. In this book, Dr. Annemarie Mingo has assembled oral histories of more than 40 women from the Civil Rights Movement. So Annemarie Mingo did come in and speak with my class while we were going over this book, and one of the things that she shared was that this took so much longer than she ever imagined it would. It was part of her doctoral thesis, and it kept her in motion for almost 2 years longer than intended because there was so many women that she captured the stories of. And these women were young in the 60s, but many of them are getting to the point where they're not going to be able to share their stories anymore. So she captured a lot of very beautiful things. And these testimonies and threads that tie their stories together explain a lot about why so many young people participated in the movement. And one of the primary factors was that sometimes men of a working age were not available. They were working to support their families, and they could not get to some of the places they needed to be. Mingo shares that often the earliest moments, memories, and influences of social activism for the women that shared their experiences in these oral histories came from their families, often from grandparents or other relatives who stood up for themselves and spoke out for justice. These family histories of activism recount stories of courage in the deep Jim Crow South of the early 20th century. Given the realities of lynch mobs and other violence against Black people, the courageous acts of many family members were emblemized on the memories of their children and were later passed on to their children and their grandchildren. Here's a story from a woman named Lillian Sue Bethel. Lillian was a no-nonsense type of woman who was raised in Albany, Georgia, and Central Florida. Her Aunt Helen was the one who taught her to be independent and not afraid of anyone, a clear distinction from what most young Blacks were taught in Southwest Georgia, where whites were expected to be treated like authority figures worthy of fear. Lillian had an incident that she noted where her aunt boldly stood up for herself during a shopping trip. Lillian states, "We were in a clothing store, and she was buying me a pair of shoes. We were standing there waiting to be serviced, and this white lady came and got in front of us in line. And my aunt just said to her, 'I'm sorry, we were in front of you.' And the white lady responded back, 'No, I was here first.' And of course, exercising what she thought was right, said, 'Well, you may have been here first, but I'm white.' My aunt told her she didn't care what she was. Now, see, those were lynching words. She didn't care what she was. And I'm sure part of her bravery came from her father that refused to rely on white people for his family's livelihood. And this actually presented quite an economic struggle for her family in a time when many jobs involved working for white people. And it's notable that also James Cone, whose words I shared earlier, also grew up in this tradition. His father refused to let his mother work as a domestic worker in a household, and he refused to work for a white boss. And sometimes this was hard to hold true to this ethic, but that is how he learned his faith. Stories from our ancestors play an enormous role in our values, for better or for worse. Lillian went on to protest in many places in Georgia, as she encouraged other students to participate as well and encourage people to walk out of classes as part of the efforts that were taking place. No one does this work alone, and this was a theme coming through all these works too, is they were emboldened by the people in their lives to do this work together. When it came to the point where her activism eventually led to her being arrested, her aunt arrived to pay her bill. She refused to leave and stayed in jail until all of the women in her cell were released on Christmas Eve in 1960. Lillian was expelled from school along with 29 other classmates, but she was lucky. She was able to start again the following year, and she considered herself very fortunate, as many other students were not able to be completing their educations as a result of their activism and being arrested. Lillian continued to work for justice in her community for the rest of her life. Different schools had different responses to activism, and within Mingo's book, there are many stories of teachers and community members that were supporting the students that were going to protests. Community members brought meals and homework to students who were placed in jail, these women were also able to kind of keep track of people so that their parents would know where they were, so that their families were not worried that they were unsafe. There's always a risk of unsafety, but the presence of a witness can be a factor in anyone's safety, and this is important to note. Another woman, Marjorie Wallace Smith, was the youngest of 8 children and describes herself as the feisty one who would drink out of the whites-only water fountain in Parisian's department store near her home, much to the dismay of her siblings. Her activism that started early and remained with her through her grassroots activism enabled her to travel to many spaces within the work that she did. And while she was there, she recalled so many homes without running water and people that could only sign their names with an X. And this kept them from being able to register to vote, and to vote even if they did get registered somehow. Marjorie came to understand that literacy in the Black community was critical to voter registration as a means of creating lasting cultural change. So many people participated from all over the country in allowing access to voting rights, whether it be teaching people how to read or putting students up in their homes if they were unable to stay in white hotels. And also, several Unitarian Universalists joined this work, including Sharon Leshin, who's sitting right over there. She helped register people in Georgia when she was in college. So there are many ways to participate. Marjorie's mother died at a young age, but taught her the 23rd Psalm and to serve a God that she knew in her heart. And it is impossible to underestimate the role of faith that informed the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King was a spiritual leader, a social leader, and inspired many, many people to engage in this work. His leadership validated a deep understanding that the faith in communities would help the people he served. And Mingo notes that in all of the stories that she collected, a freedom faith was illuminated that understood God's role in justice and the desire to work with God to bring about social change. Mingo says freedom faith was evident among Black women, men, children during the period of enslavement in the United States. Freedom faith was formed in relation to scripture and song and worship. Freedom faith had a particular expression for Black women in America in the mid-20th century, rooted in 2 elements. First, an inborn desire, not only physical, but also emotional and social freedom. And second, an inherited legacy of faith that staked claims on God's promise of freedom as they understood it in the Bible. Those are just 2 stories amongst many others, but what it really brought home to me is that when you're working in faith community, it is important to be in contact, to be in support, to be prepared, to care. And as this world seems to be hanging in a very unstable place right now, maybe it always is. In fact, I'll just say that it always is. It's something we kind of need to keep in touch with all the time. And I know there's a tendency for people to absolutely positively want to fix something and fix it forever. But change is cyclical, and maybe there will always be oppression in the world, but our job is to work in the time that we have here in this life to push forward ways for everyone to be free. Some lessons that we can keep in place is that we are more powerful together. Also, our faith is a freedom faith, isn't it? We had many people that were involved in the civil rights movement and have continued to use their lives to raise up freedom for others and end oppression. And this is all of our work. And again, it's hard sometimes to not be able to see what our actions actually end up moving forward in the world, but we have to trust that what we are doing is giving the people and the generations moving forward an easier place to start from. And they are learning from us. So share your stories. Over the last 2 days, I have heard so many stories of beautiful work that people have done in this congregation, and also horrible things that people have seen in light of racial inequities that have been part of our life and are ongoing. What I suggest as we're moving forward today is that we lean into our shared values of justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity. And may we find hope and resilience to give generations to come a better place to start from. Thank you for all you do to promote justice and equity in this world. Amen.
Please rise in body or spirit, and let's sing When Our Heart Is in a Holy Place.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Unitarian Universalist congregations are fully self-supporting, meaning that members and friends raise all the funds for their operating budget. the ministries, and the programs of this church. We are ever grateful for your gifts of time, treasure, and talent. OCUUC amplifies a spirit of generosity by sharing one half of the plate we receive with an organization that shares our values. In light of the recent and ongoing devastating fires in Southern California, the January plate share has been changed to the UUA Disaster Relief Fund. And this hits close to home for us because we had several people from Pasadena here at the memorial service for Clover veterans yesterday. I said her last name so wrong, I'm sure, I'm sorry. So they were here to celebrate her life, and 25 members of the members and friends of their church lost their houses. So this is something that really directly affects our community. Some of you may also be affected directly too, but this hits home for us. It just happened yesterday, and it's tough. So your donation allows the UUA to respond flexibly to current disaster needs such as this. So there are multiple ways in which you can support the church and this organization. You can mail a check, you can go through our website, or use an app called Vanco Mobile. If you're a roomer, you can also simply use the basket as it is passed as it comes around. The choice is yours. All the information is on our website should you need it, and thank you all so much for your acts of generosity. We are a very giving and loving church.
Look at me, no man's
Thank you, everybody. Please join us in singing We Gather Together, a song that puts our intentions into words and expresses the many gratitudes for the gifts that we share.
We gather together, we gather as one, for peace, love, and justice for everyone. We give from our hearts to show that we care. We can change lives with what we share.
Now is the time when we honor important events in our lives. You are invited, one and all, whether you are a member, a friend, or a visitor, to participate in our weekly ritual of joys and sorrows. So, let's take a chance to just take a deep breath and center ourselves. Perhaps you are coming here today holding something very close to your heart, moments from the last days or hours that have struck you at your core. If you would like to honor such a profound joy or sorrow, you are invited to do so. If you are a roomer, you're invited to come forward to light your candle. And if you would like to share a joy or a sorrow, you can write it out on a slip of paper that will be provided to you from an usher, and you can just hand it to me. And if you are a Zoomer, you are invited to write your joy or sorrow in the chat. Once the roomers are done lighting candles, I will read the joys and sorrows out loud, and Dawn will come up and join us to light candles and offer a prayer at the end. As the music is played, I invite you to silently offer healing, love, and care for the people in your community, whether they're healing or celebrating, all in accordance with your belief. Word. I have a sorrow from Sarah H. in remembrance of her husband Rob's passing 2 years ago. She says she misses him every day. I would like to light a candle for the community as we embrace our values of love and equity and peace, and in support of anyone in this room and people in our community at large and the world that continues to struggle with oppressive behaviors. And I would like to invite Dawn up to offer a prayer. Oh, whoa, I got one more. Sorry. If anybody else would like to eke one in right at the end, I have room for one more after this. Or Lori Kay says, thank you, Laura, Reverend Sean, and all who participated in Clover's beautiful, warm, and comforting memorial yesterday. Thank you, Lori. It was lovely.
Spirit of life, Spirit of love, Spirit of hope, Spirit of justice, God known by many different names, you've given us a day unique from any other. You've connected us, all of us, with each other and with the world in ways that are largely a mystery to us. You've given us little instruction other than to be present in our own lives, to feel wonder at the creations of the universe, and to love one another. You put gifts and challenges in our paths, joys and sorrows, strengths and frailties, some of which we have already encountered, and others we have yet to discover. On this unique day, may we receive exactly what it is that we need. Amen.
So let's join together as we extinguish the flame of our chalice and say together, we extinguish our chalice. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. So thank you all for joining us this morning. If you're a guest or a visitor or someone who has not yet been known to us, I invite you to become a part of this beloved church. If you would like to know more about our church, we invite you to either stop by the welcome table, which is right out there to your left, in the courtyard, and so we have information to share with you, or you can contact us at hello, and we will help you get connected. Zoomers are welcome to stay after the chat and talk to one another online. We want everyone to feel a part of this beloved community, so please reach out and we'll help you get connected.
I have one more thing to share from Francie C. She is a family fan of Ohio State versus Notre Dame playing this Monday in Atlanta, Georgia. Grandson Ryan works in personnel at Ohio State. And Sierra. Oh, granddaughter Sierra is alumni of Notre Dame. It's a family affair for us. Yeah, send some hope their way. I will tell you that I live across the street from a permanent Ohio State flag. So just by proxy, I think I've become a fan. Then you should go hang out with my in-laws who are Nebraska fans. So, our announcements today. Today at noon, we have the endowment update presentation in Daniels Hall, and I encourage anyone to attend. I am told it will only be 15 minutes long or so, and you can bring your coffee, and this is important to our community. So please join us there. Also, as you're getting your coffee, you will notice that there is a table full of puzzles. And this is a puzzle exchange, a puzzle swap, and you're welcome to swap some puzzles. Judith? Okay, I'm going to repeat that on the microphone. Judith Stamper is sharing with all of you that you may take a puzzle regardless of whether you brought one or not. She wants them not to come back home with her. She has already completed those puzzles. I will also say that Sunday on February 2nd, after the service, we are revisioning. That is religious education visioning. See what we did there? Come help Reverend Sean and Danielle and our director of religious education to brainstorm ways to improve our religious education department and give lots of great things to our children and youth that are in that program. So please mark that on your calendar. It'll be fun. And with that, I'm going to say one last word about Dr. King, if I can get the slides to work. So I hope that you're leaving today with some hope in your heart during times of real uncertainty right now. And I leave you with these words. He says, "We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope."
Let us go out and all do our part. Let us go out, bring joy to each heart. Let us go out with indifference destroy. Let us go out with joy. Let us go out and all do our part. Let us go out, bring joy to each heart. Let us go out with indifference destroy. Let us go out with joy. Let us go out with joy. Let us go out with joy.
This service is over, but our service continues. We look forward to seeing you soon.